Good morning, everybody. We've got a beautiful morning for today's meeting. It is Thursday, February 8th, 2018, 9 a.m. We're here at the beautiful Taggart Point Community Center that Commissioner Lynchert and the rest of the board built for our constituents and for everybody in the county, really, but it's a good problem to have, to see a community center and a recreation center like this be overcrowded. Need to grow, so it keeps our children working together and learning sportsmanship and community, and just a great place. Commissioner, congratulations on building this. I know it's been up for a couple of years, but I always enjoy coming down here. It's 9 a.m. and I'm going to ask Pastor Jenkins Peterson from the First Baptist Church of Navarre to lead us in our prayer this morning, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag. And I'll ask Commissioner Salter to lead us in the pledge.
Oh, sorry. I want you to know this isn't the only time we at our church pray for you. And so thank you all for your service. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you for all the blessings that you give us life, that you give us freedom of choice, that you give us the ability to make decisions. And Lord, we pray for these, that we'll make decisions today for this community. We thank you that we live in a land that is free. We thank you for those that died for us so that we might have this freedom, a picture of what your Son did by dying and rising again for our spiritual freedom. And so, Lord, we pray for these that are making decisions in our community. Lord, we pray for their families. We pray for their other careers. We pray for clarity of mind, that they will do what is pleasing, that they will execute justice and righteousness, and Lord, that they will work to grow this community in a way that will keep people safe and keep the Constitution focused and focus on the Constitution. And Lord, we just again thank you so much that you have given us governments that work for us. And we pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Pastor, thank you very much, and we appreciate the prayers from the church and all the churches. This time I'll ask for approval of the minutes for the January 25th, 2018 special meeting. If there's any changes to be noted? Hearing none, I'll approve that without objection. Hearing none, it passes. I'll start to my right with Commissioner Parker. Any changes to today's agenda?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Salter?
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Lynchert?
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Want to congratulate Michelle Parker's grandson, Cameron, on signing with Delta State, which happens to be my dad's alma mater.
Great. Got quite a few athletes from Santa Rosa County, if you look back through time, and I'm sure we'll create quite a few more. Anything from staff?
Mr. Chairman, I would just note that at number 6 on your regular agenda, we did add that I had sent you an email about that. The legal department had those 4 restrictive easements that we needed to extend that for a little bit longer. I believe the closing is imminent on those.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll look at that when we get to it on number 6. Anything else?
No other changes.
Ma'am? All right. Anything? Donnie, anything? Okay. All right. And at this time, we'll move to the consent agenda. We have gone through the consent agenda on Monday. Consent agenda includes Administrative Committee, Budget and Finance Committee, and the other committees, Economic Development, Engineers Report, Public Service Report, Public Works Committee. All these items have been discussed on Monday and approved by the board for movement to the consent agenda. At this time, is there any items on the consent agenda that the board would like to bring back for reconsideration? Seeing none, I'm going to move the consent agenda without objection. Hearing that it passes. This time we'll move to the regular agenda. Item 1 on the Administrative Committee is an item that I feel very proud to be able to bring to the board and also be chair when it takes place. That's the Indian Creek Resolution. Discussion of a resolution supporting the Santa Rosa County Indian Creek Tribe Incorporated being acknowledged as a federally recognized Indian tribe. This morning we have quite a few members here with us this morning for this recognition. And at this time, I'd open the floor first to Commissioner Parker and then the other commissioners for any comments they have before we move forward.
Only comment is good morning. Thank you for coming out. I wish we could have had it in Milton. It's funny, we're in Milton and we have Navarre and Gulf Breeze issues, and then y'all made the drive today, but I know you got to enjoy crossing the big bridge like I did. You know, one of the deacons at our church, Robert Jackson, lives right there next year. Property there off of Willard Norris, and he's done nothing but compliment the improvements he saw on the property. And me and my wife had the opportunity to go out to the powwow with our 2 children, and it's amazing just to watch little youngsters how fascinated they are with the different you know, heritage type festivities and dances and music. So thank you so much, and just proud to be a part of the county and the board and able to help you in any manner that we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Parker. Commissioner Salter, any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to thank all the group for being here this morning and compliment you on your property, your grounds you have up off Willard Norris Road. It's really starting to take a good effect now. I'm happy it's in District 3. There's a lot of Indian heritage up in the Chumuckla community, so I'm proud that it's in that part of the county. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Salter. Commissioner Lynchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and thank you for coming down here. I'm glad y'all are here because we've packed the room, so to speak. So, thank you for being here. Happy to support this resolution, and best of luck in all your efforts going forward.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. This time I'll read the resolution. This is a resolution by the Board of County Commissioners of Santa Rosa County supporting the Santa Rosa County Creek Indian Tribe being acknowledged as a federally recognized Indian tribe. If you all would like to come up to the podium, we'll read this in the official record. Y'all can come on up, and our PIO's gonna start wearing out her camera, and we'll get this all in public record. Again, good morning. All right, whereas Santa Rosa County Creek Indian Tribe Incorporated preserves and teaches the language, heritage, and culture of Native Americans, and whereas the Santa Rosa County Creek Indian Tribe Incorporated has identified as American Indian entity on a substantially continuous basis in Santa Rosa County, Florida. And whereas Santa Rosa County Creek Indian Tribe exists as a distinct community in support of overall community, and whereas the Santa Rosa County Creek Indian Tribe as an autonomous entity has maintained authority over its members, and whereas the Santa Rosa County Creek Indian Tribe has written bylaws which include a membership criteria, and whereas Santa Rosa County Creek Indian Tribe membership consists of individuals who descend from a historical Indian tribe or tribes which combine to function as a single autonomous political entity. Whereas Santa Rosa County Creek Indian Tribe is composed principally of persons who are not members of any acknowledged North American Indian tribe. Now therefore be it resolved by the Santa Rosa County Board of County Commissioners supporting the Santa Rosa County Creek Indian Tribe Incorporated being acknowledged as a federally recognized Indian tribe. This is going to be passed and adopted by the Board of County Commissioners with all yea votes, 1 absent, at the committee meeting on this day. and it'll be signed by me, the chairman. Folks, congratulations. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Comments?
we are descended from Creek Indians who lived in this county beginning over 200 years ago. And they loved this county. It was sacred to them. In fact, the word Shemukla in the Muskogee language means to bow head to the ground. They love this county as we do. Our roots are deep and our love is strong for this county. And we so much appreciate the support that we get from the county in general and particularly from the Board of County Commissioners. We're humbled and we're grateful that your support in our endeavors. Mado, thank you.
Right, and of course, I just have to take a moment and mention probably the first member that I ever met, and that's Lloyd Highnote, and I didn't meet him as a Indian tribe member, but as a city council person, later to find out how involved Lloyd was, and I'm sure we all miss Lloyd. He's a great fellow, so thank you. If you will, we'll walk him out there and get a few pictures with y'all.
Went out of my head. Yes, in Irvin. Thank you.
Let her take a couple, so everybody's looking at her.
All right, great way to open a meeting. Great way to open a meeting. All right, item number 2 on our regular agenda is the planning workshop agenda. Discussion of agenda items for scheduled board planning workshop on February 13th. Before we end this, I got a question with Mr. Gamillion.
Yes, sir.
You want to go over the items?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get there. Yes, the current items to be discussed will be the strategic planning, an initiative that's been, the staff's been working on, and we'll discuss that with the board further. General fund reserve policy, that was one of the, which would involve to some degree budget discussions. The capital building projects, of course, that would include the courthouse, jail, et cetera. The budget overview that I've already mentioned, there'd be that discussion of kind of setting the course for the FY19 budget. and then would discuss the county administrator position. As you know, that I have made you aware of my pending retirement, and so there'd be an opportunity to discuss that as well.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions, comments from other board members? None? I did have one question. There is a workshop also in Pensacola from 8:30 to 9:30 that Quint Studer's putting on. I was wondering, I know we've already advertised this, but would it be possible to back this meeting up an hour, and would it interfere with the rest of the board's schedule? Mr.
Since it's already been advertised, I don't know that we should change. The other thing is, this is a fairly aggressive agenda for a workshop. So I suspect we need to start as early as we can and bring a lunch. But I'll be glad to listen to the rest of the board's input on it.
Mr. Andrews? Yeah.
Excuse me. So a little bit over a week to give notice is pretty short notice. I mean,
Understand.
otherwise, I would say that
And I didn't know if we could start the meeting and then just recess for 30 minutes or so, but I don't want to interfere with plans already. I just, if it was something that worked out simply, I'd do it, but if it's gonna be complicated, then just don't need to. It's not that important, I guess.
I was just gonna say, I sent a reply to that email, asking if they were gonna have somebody to video it or something, or maybe we could watch it later, and if I get a response on that, I'll make sure I disseminate it.
And what it is, Quint Studer's invited a guest speaker in, and he's a former mayor of Pittsburgh, which is the city I'm from, but it's a lot of information. Studer Group has done a lot for redevelopment of downtown Pittsburgh, or, yeah, well, downtown Pensacola, and he's starting to reach out further even, and the city of Milton had him at the Imogene a few months back for a discussion on reallocating or redoing downtown Milton, redeveloping downtown Milton, and it just seemed nice to stay on top of that, but I'll just pass on that. And Sam, if you do get that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Well, then that closes this item number 2. Without any other comments or questions, we'll move it without objection. Hearing none, it passes. Item 3 is sick leave pool policy modifications. This is a discussion on request from Clerk Dawn Spencer. We've read over that the other day. Donnie, do you have anything to add to that today?
No, Mr. Chairman. Devan and I made the changes that are reflected on the new agenda item that you have there. So I think it's in good shape.
Any comments, questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll move it without objection. Hearing none, it passes. Item 4 is Navarre Beach Volunteer Fire Department rate increase request. This is a discussion to approve this increase on commercial and residential rates for Navarre Beach Volunteer Fire Department. I think the other day we were pretty satisfied with the question of the residential rates, but we had quite a few questions about the commercial rates. So Commissioner Lynchard, would you like to address this, or we have somebody from the fire department to, no, Commissioner Lynchard had some pretty good questions on Monday. So.
If you have anything you want to lead off with, you can feel free. I did.
And basically what we're saying is we're much lower already than we're providing fire protection for hotels or things like that, or any commercial property. So I think we're in line with what is normally fire protection for our area out there on both residential and commercial.
Mr. Lynchard, I kind of sum up you asked me at the last meeting where those numbers came from, where we just come up with this 15 cents.
by the National Consensus and the National Building Association, and they say that the average size of a house is 2,300 square foot. We took that number and divided it into the size of Spring Hill Suites and come up with an average. So if a residential, they're currently paying 16 cents, that we feel a commercial should pay the same as a residential.
So you used an equivalent residential unit approach,
Yes, sir.
basically?
Yes,
And
sir.
that's my real concern with bounding off into the increase. We haven't seen any backup or justification as to the amount of the rate.
Yes, sir.
And the requirement is that any MSBU be fairly apportioned.
Yes, sir.
I have not, I don't know, do you know if Holly Navarre did an apportionment study when they came up with the rate?
Sir, I can't speak on their behalf. I'm not sure.
So I haven't seen one.
Yes, sir.
And it's a 15% increase in residential rates.
Yes, sir.
A 400% plus increase in commercial rates.
Yes, sir.
So there is it's a big difference. It's a big jump.
It is, but it is in comparison to the, if somebody owns a house on Navarre Beach, they should not, pay more than a commercial that we ran 2 calls there yesterday during the storms. It has impacted our department and our responses.
And I don't doubt that.
Yes, sir.
For 1 second. And I don't doubt that there are needs that you have that aren't being filled now, or that you could use more funding to improve the level of service.
Yes, sir.
So at this point, before we increase an MSBU, we have to have a public hearing, and that's done in the summer. Roy, you want to?
Yeah, the statutory process is that there's a preliminary resolution that can be established, and that has to be sent to the property appraiser or advertised by the independent taxing authorities. In this case, it would go through the property appraiser, because this is a county MSBU, and we have to do that before. Actually, it has to go to the property appraiser at the latest in May. That's the preliminary rate. Then we have to advertise. We have to have a public hearing. We have to advertise a public hearing, and that's done in August. And the formal final resolution of rates for all of the MSBUs is in August of each year. So whatever the action the board took today would be merely preliminary in any case.
When is the last time we had a rate study done? Do we know that for MSBU departments? Because this one falls under us. I mean, I've been critical of the rate increase at Holly Navarre
Yes,
last
sir.
year. I think the methodology that was used to set the rates is, I don't have all the information on it. But this time it's in our wheelhouse, and we're setting those MSBU rates. And if we do an MSBU increase for Navarre Beach, we've already received emails from other departments, MSBU departments in the county, saying the same thing, that we need more money as well. So I'm not comfortable with an increase in MSBU rates unless we follow the proper procedures. And the proper procedures to me is an MSBU rate study, which comes up with that fair apportionment methodology and rates for the individual properties. Different classes of commercial, what have you. Because right now there's just one class of commercial on Navarre Beach. Other jurisdictions do it different. Because you have high impact commercial and you have low impact commercial. But to cast that wide net, draw all commercial under one rate, I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it. So
Well, one thing we do on giving a break, because it's also done in square footage. So you're looking at 10,000 square foot or below, it's just a flat rate, because I think it's $1,000 what we're talking about. And then as you get on above that, like a hotel, then you're going to get into the square footage. So we actually give breaks to the smaller businesses.
right, but if you had a 10,000 square foot retirement home, it's going to have a much greater impact on your delivery of services than a 10,000 square foot furniture store. or a 10,000 square foot warehouse, or whatever the case may be. There's different classes of commercial, different impacts on the delivery of services.
I would agree, if we're looking at a large community, but you're looking at a 4-mile stretch of land, an island,
Yeah.
That's mainly, residential.
I
Very few
agree with you.
commercial,
I agree with you.
and
But
commercials
we
are
can't do
usually-
anything today anyway, because we have to go through set the preliminary rate and then adopt the final rate. So I would like for us to look into, having an MSBU rate study done, to determine whether or not this is an appropriate apportionment.
Now, is this for commercial only?
No, it would be both, because,
Yeah, 'cause I
because
was-
it has to be apportioned between residential and commercial.
Because since it was lowered in 2011, I was under the understanding we could raise it back up without going to a ballot. Because it was $400 in 2010, and we lowered it in 2011 from 400 to 350. And I was under the understanding that we could raise it back to the 400 without going to a ballot.
Mr. Andrews, can you?
We're not talking about going to a ballot. It's not gonna be a referendum. It's gonna be a determination by these board members, but it has to be based upon the benefit received and apportioned equitably. That's the legal requirements for an MSBU.
Right, so you could vote on that today.
Pardon?
So they could vote on that today, the residential portion.
Well, it could, but the fact that it was $400 reduced to $350 and is now being increased to $400 doesn't have any evidentiary basis in whether or not that's the benefit received and apportioned equally. It's what apparently it's what the leaseholders have agreed that they would be willing to pay, but still, that's not a determination as to whether that's the benefit. It might, if there's a rate study, it might justify a rate of $500 or
It's like
$300.
when we did the MSBU rate study for the beach renourishment, the purpose of that rate study was to determine an appropriate amount of an MSBU across different classes of property and out on the beach. You know, who's going to benefit and what ratio.
I guess one of the questions we got too is when you look at the time period you're talking about in the summer before it would actually group together in the studies and all that stuff that you have to do. It kind of really impacts on us because we're right now purchasing a fire truck. We have to replace a ladder truck. It's 20 years old. We have no other choice because it's costing us more to maintain it. And if you look at Ms. Bell's document that she sent out on some of the expenses we're running into, we're working in the red versus the black on some of our intakes from MSBU's. The cost of running the fire department has gone up since 2011.
Roy,
The preliminary rate resolution has to be, notice has to be given by either the property appraiser or by the taxing authorities through a trim notice, which is due in July 1. So the preliminary rate, again, needs to be at least completed, the preliminary rate by May. But that preliminary rate is not final until the public hearing, which takes place after the trim notice, and a public hearing, the same that was the process that was followed with the MSBU for beach renourishment, which the board can determine, and in that case, determine not to impose that. But that was at the formal hearing to set the final rate, which will take place in August.
Roy, can I ask something? If this board was to say today that they could move the residential rate back to $400, how soon could they incorporate that? I mean, are we looking at the same timeline for them to do that versus?
Yes.
Okay, so if we said yes today on the $50 a house, you can't do it without going through this whole rigmarole anyway.
Yes, sir, we just need to kind of plan for the
So
future.
why don't we take Commissioner Lynchard's advice and go ahead and let's do the rate study. I feel this board is cognizant enough of your dilemma, as all the fire department's dilemma, that there's going to be a positive outcome on the end. Maybe a little, as Roy said, it may be a little better than you're counting on, and maybe a few bucks worse than you're counting on. But if if we could pull the trigger today and you could start collecting $50 tomorrow, it'd be one thing.
Yes, sir.
Since we have to go through all this, then I like his suggestion, let's do it the right way. And I had one question for Commissioner Lynchard. If we do this rate study countywide, would you be in favor of incorporating it to all the fire departments, or just concentrate on them? We're getting requests from them all. If we're gonna do the rate study, I think we need to make it across the board.
And that could certainly be the case. I think we should put it on our agenda for the next meeting to talk about a rate study. And between now and then, staff can research what that's gonna take, what that's gonna look like, how long. But I support you guys, and I support what you're doing out there. I will, in all likelihood, support an MSBU rate increase. I just don't want to do it based on an arbitrary number.
Sure.
Okay? And I want us to be able to back it up. And I know the service you provide is invaluable, you know. So let's make sure we get it done right. You know, we don't want
One of our problems with is we have to back off of this truck. Our service is going to be impacted, because we're supposed to sign the contract next week.
Well, and again, it gets back to
Could I
my
ask one
question.
question? Gary Burroker, 8499 Gulf Boulevard, and I'm the vice president of the leaseholders, and we do support it. But I'm confused a little bit where you can't use it, but when the condos are paying, I understand they're not quite the same, but they're paying $400 per unit. Our condo, the Pearl where I live at, will pay $40,000 for fire service next year. This commercial rate is not as much as that. So we already have several large buildings out there. They're not commercial, but they are big buildings, and this rate is very much in line with that. In fact, if you know fairness, the condo owners are paying more than maybe they should be. But I'm worried about this study. If you're suggesting they need to change $350 per parcel, which we're doing now, that's going to be a dramatic difference in the way we go by the MSBU. Because right now it's $350 per unit. It's that simple, whether you have a 1,000 square foot house or a 5,000 square foot house. And it works.
But your statement right there kind of supported my position. You said that the residential are paying more essentially than commercial.
Only in the condos situations.
Right, but maybe there's a break, maybe condos and residential, maybe condos and.
And the real problem is there's only
residential
five commercial properties there right now. And really, this should have been taken care of when the old Holiday Inn was there. That's the only building that's over 10,000 square foot. And you got 4 other properties. So we're talking about one building, and we're holding up the entire process here on our fire department because of that.
And Gary, I'm
sorry, I'm just trying to be respectful of what you're saying, but you know, they tried to get this done last year, and for some reason it fell through the crack. This was approved in February of 2016. This process, and it fell through the crack. The process you're just talking about. So now we're a whole year later, and now we're saying we're going to be another whole year later because of your request.
Losing track of when, Roy, did we go through this? You know,
If we're going to try to get the MSBU on this year's, the 2018 tax bill, then we're going to have to really work promptly on getting some type of rate study done or other justification for that amount, because we have to have a preliminary rate resolution. We have to have a preliminary rate to advertise no later than July 1st. The trim notices go out on July 1st. So, and the time frame that's in the statute is that each taxing authority or each MSBU has to submit their information to the property appraiser by May.
and what information would that be?
Would be the rate.
Their request?
The preliminary rate.
Okay.
And that rate is then advertised, published, and we have the required public hearing in August, and the final rate is established.
But that rate has to be
The rate can.
mean a matrix or?
Well,
the-
and at the final rate resolution, the board has the option of charging less than the preliminary rate, just like in your ad valorem taxes. Not going forward with the MSBU's at all, which is what we did in regard to the beach renourishment, or establishing the rate at the preliminary resolution or less.
All right. Would the board have a problem with us today, since we're under a timeline, just give staff the ability through board motion to go ahead and, I guess a rate study would have to be put out for an RFP first?
Well, we're gonna need to, I mean, if we have rate resolution or rate studies for all of our MSBU's, there's a whole lot of difference in what would be a reasonable rate for Munson and Navarre Beach. So I think we may wanna, we've been going along with those other, MSBU's.
You know, those,
Gary, hang on.
Yeah, but they're so
Gary,
different. I
hold
mean,
on,
every
hold on
fire
just a second.
department's
Let
so
us finish
different.
our
You're talking
discussion.
about a major study.
Yeah, it's gonna be difficult to try to reconcile that. Certainly, it's gonna be difficult to try to get that resolved in the time that we're gonna need to make a decision in regard to this. So I would say that we focus at this point on this MSBU on Navarre Beach, and take the direction of the board to seek some type of, find out what we can get done within the time frame that we have.
All right, then rather than waiting 2 weeks, putting it back on an agenda, then without objection, I'm going to direct staff to go ahead and immediately start do an RFP for independent, how we do the rating or the study? Independent firm would do the study?
A request for qualifications, I guess,
RFQ.
because we don't, I don't know how to do this study. So-
I know. I'm just asking for what direction on what I need to direct staff to do. Just, let's get us,
We could
Commissioner.
have staff bring back information on moving forward with an RFQ for a rate study, an MSBU rate study for Navarre Beach.
Right.
Thank you. All right, now I'll do that without objection. Hearing none, it passes. And Gary, I'd certainly support, I'm here
Well,
today
I'm
willing to
still
support.
confused by all this. I mean, I feel like you're putting a requirement on us and Navarre Beach, so you're not putting on anybody else in the county. Now, I understand,
they're not asking for
even
an
if we ask for
increase.
the 400 and you said, okay, it still has to go through a process, right? If in the process is it gets advertised so that you get a chance for everybody to make comments. But this process is a whole different process. Everybody seemed to have had their own way to calculate their fire rates today. They're all different. Some do it on value of the property, some do it all different kinds. And to ask us to do that when we've been through that, at this time, I think is a real burden on us. It's not that difficult. If you want to do the whole county, I think that whole thing ought to be done at one time and you do it later on. But I think you're opening a big can of worms there that's going to be a very difficult thing to accomplish, even if you had a year to do it.
Right, Roy, again,
And I understand, but you're asking us, that we are the taxing authority here.
I understand.
You're asking us to impose a 400% increase on commercial rates on Navarre Beach.
One location.
I understand.
One
So
location.
are you singling them out?
But if you look at it, it's already, it should have been there from the day the Holiday Inn was built, because it's over 10,000 square feet. Everybody would agree that their rate should have been higher than the rate that they got. I don't think anybody would have said that rate was correct.
Mr. Chairman.
So what if they backed off and said, okay, let's just give us the residential, we'll deal with the commercial rate next year and do a study.
We're still gonna have to do the study. I mean, and I don't know about the difference between the 350 and the 400, whether we can arbitrarily make that jump. We'll look into that. I'm not sure what the language was back in 2011, when it was lowered. You said you were under the impression you could
Yeah, I believe
automatically raise it back up.
Yeah, I do believe there's language in there that says we can move it back to the 400. We'd have to research that.
Well, we can look into that between now and the next meeting. And
But I mean, I think the main difference here is we've got the leaseholders 100% support. We had them at an advertised meeting, and they all said, we want to have a better fire department. They have come to our station, seen the disrepair. So the residential, if you want to do the study for the commercial, we're 100% behind that. I do feel we'll get more money than what we're asking on commercial. But the residential, we have a dire need right now, and we have the people that pay the tax are saying, we want to do that. And I do believe that we do have the ability to go back to the 400 without going that route, but we'll have to do a little bit of research on that.
And that's all I'm asking. Let's do our research and make sure we get it done correctly.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one comment. I understand the frustration. I think I understand kind of the conversation today, and so I won't jump on that. But you know, let's not kind of forget how you know, these communities became great before we interjected government, and that is if these leaseholders want to better the fire department. And I would also urge you, even for the Spring Hill Suites, which the representative I spoke with stated they are not, you know, getting the capacity yet that they wanted. But I'm sure they want to have a stellar fire department as well. I don't think, but I'm going to say this in a form of a question that Roy can verify, there would be anything that would stop a donation from the leaseholders. This is something obviously they feel strongly about, that they could get together with all their members and the residential units. I mean, I remember as a boy seeing fire departments come and knock on my daddy's door and hold boots out at the you know, intersections. I vividly remember that, and I remember my Skyline Fire Department coming around. And Roy, is that legal? Can they donate funds? And also, because then you could approach Spring Hill Suites, and you never know, they might not donate anything, might donate more than you're asking, but
it's hard to budget a $42,000 payment on donations.
they could raise it if they wanted.
Absolutely. Spring Hill Suites is already paid and they are getting reimbursed. So they already agreed to it, and they have no problem with it, I'm sure.
I mean, even the leaseholders and all the folks that are saying, like you're saying,
right, but
hey, we want this.
The county collects our MSBU. That's something we don't do, and it's
Could
that's
they
not
donate it, Roy? Could the leaseholders donate this money to the fire department?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm getting at, if you'll just give us a little simple Milton fellow a chance, is if y'all want the Navarre Fire Department, you as a resident and the board and representatives want them to have a better fire truck, you don't have to wait on this body. Great things that happen. I mean, that's why I guarantee if I want something done to help seniors in the community or something, I'm going to get a lot quicker response out of a church group or a concerned residents than I am county government. So I don't want you to leave just going to, hey, we need this now and we can't get it. If these folks are wanting to pay, they can write the check and a heck of a lot quicker to you and the leaseholders and bring one big check rather than going through our process. But we do have to support the legal process. But I just don't want you to forget about from that, hey, leaseholders don't have to wait to give money. And they can, and I tell you one other thing you could do is, this has been my thought process all along, is Spring Hill Suites, you know, the thing is, for some of these commercial things, I had some hesitation on that big of a jump when you see the rate increase, because they're bringing in a lot of money from the sales tax side when people come in, tourists, and spend it. And that sales tax is providing a lot of things that, you know, the fire executive board asked for and we were able to meet. And that's another avenue you could come back with funds request. If this is a dire need, you could absolutely request that we review that. We're right now starting this budget cycle of looking at where we're going to spend local option sales tax. Listen, the sheriff, when he wants stuff, he'll come and ask. So there's other avenues. I just don't want you guys to leave with the thought of like, well, golly, it's going to be, you know, a lot longer.
Well, with due respect, we've already, the leaseholder said, okay, this is the way that we want to do it. We have a fire department. We're willing to pay the $50 more. That's the way that they want to do it. And we're just you're throwing up a big red flag here that we didn't know about. So I don't understand what's going to happen in 2 weeks with what you just passed.
I want to try to clarify that. My feeling is if legally you can raise the $50 back up to $400, the shortest route possible, that be allowed. You got one vote for that. I'll throw it out there without objection if we get that in just a moment. And the second part of this is gonna, and that doesn't pertain to any of your commercial. Spring Hill Suites is gonna continue paying what they're paying, whatever rate that is, until we can complete the study, as Commissioner Lynchard suggested. Then if residential goes up from there or down from there, and you know, wherever that balance is, we can discuss it. As Roy said, at the very end of the day, if we're uncomfortable with that it went down, we're uncomfortable it went too high, this board can make a final adjustment. So it's not a dead-end street there either. It's not gonna just take a dive and not have no say-so. So my motion is gonna be that we do the rate study for the Navarre Beach Fire Department. We, you know, assign staff to go ahead and get started on that immediately. But as quick as staff and your group can decide the legality of raising the $50, that's done as immediate as possible through legal channels by statute, state law, and I'll do that without objection.
Mr. Chairman, I think that I'm not aware of any language, and there wouldn't be any language that said the 350 could be somehow raised to 400 automatically or upon request. The rates are established on an annual basis. That being said, there's nothing that says this board can't, at the time we do the preliminary rate resolution on all of these MSBUs, establish the residential rate on Navarre Beach is for $400 as the preliminary rate resolution while we go through the study. And then at the final rate resolution setting in August, we can establish that final rate resolution at $400 or less. Now, the rate resolution study or the rate study may come back and say $400 is not enough. We will, if we've established for the preliminary at being $400, we won't be able to increase it. If it comes back and says that $400 is too much, the board can establish it at $350 or whatever they come back with the resolution. But I don't think that there would be anything that would preclude the board from establishing a preliminary rate resolution for this. Again, this is out of order as far as the time that we do the preliminary rate resolution for all MSBUs. But the indication of the board could be that they want to establish the MSBU for residential rates on Navarre Beach at $400. Okay. And that can be the preliminary rate resolution when we do all of the preliminary rate resolutions, subject to being decreased but not increased at the final rate resolution.
And when could that, if, it still can't be incorporated until after August?
The final rate resolution, the final rate is set in August.
Okay, so
So whatever they do with the fire truck is not final until August.
Okay. What he said, without objection.
That makes, yeah, we can work with that. That's,
All right, including the, you know, the study and everything.
Yes, sir.
So, all right. All right, Brandy, can you cipher that out and, okay. Cause I'm not as good at legalese as our attorney is, so.
I'd like to make one more statement. You know, we hear a lot about, it's great that we have Spring Hill Suites out there. We love it too. But I think sometimes you forget that we have almost 1,500 leaseholders out there that rent their property. Every one of those are small businesses. Every one of them collect bed taxes, they collect sales taxes. So you take that group as a whole, it's pretty important to our economy. And I would like to make sure that we're thinking about those leaseholders that have invested hundreds of millions of dollars to make Navarre Beach what it is, and not just talk about one location. So I would ask you to consider that as well when
Absolutely.
you're talking about the hotel compared to the people that's made a lot of investment out there in that area. And they are small businesses. Some of them own 4 or 5 properties and rent them. So.
I think the will of the board today is that we want you to leave here comfortable with making that investment in that truck. We just all want to do it the right way so we don't get it thrown back in our face. And
But what I heard is they really can't make that commitment until August because they got to have the $50 more to finance it. So that's what the fire board has to live with.
and from what I'm being told from the county attorney, we can't, there's no way to pull that trigger today, so tomorrow you can send out bills for $50, so. But knowing that, and knowing, you know, how, you know, whoever your finance people are and stuff, you should be able to, that gives you more to work with.
Yes.
If we could, I think we could, if we could do it today, we would, but, you know, we can't, so.
I got one other statement. This is, goes back in history on, and I totally agree on, you know, asking the citizens of Navarro Beach to contribute. I'm right in line. I remember we did this on the beach beautification project, you know, where we went out and got monies to build the entrance to Navarro Beach and all the islands and stuff. And since that, but I'm not sure it's been a two-way street, I guess, and when the Beach Beautification Committee went downhill, we sort of lost that credibility to go out and get money from the citizens because they don't see a whole lot.
All right, let's work with what we have.
Okay.
Again, we are having a budget hearing on Monday. Go through the Chiefs Association, if, you know, maybe just have to work together on this. You know, feeling's the same on both sides. We know you need the equipment. We know we need you guys out there. You do an outstanding job. It's just, you know, taking it step by step. All right, thank you. All right. Commissioner Linder, thank you for your input on that. All right, item number 5 is U.S. Postal Service cluster mailbox coordination. This is a discussion of board policy that would require developer verification of coordination with U.S. Postal Service for all subdivision developments submitted for the board approval and include codifying language in the next round of land development code changes to add cluster mailboxes. Any questions or comments from the board? Thing from Roger? Okay. Commissioner Parker?
Mr. Chairman, that language is in your backup. That would be the policy.
Commissioner Parker?
Thank you. Couple probably more philosophical type questions, but one is the last sentence for new subdivisions not already constructed states that the area will be labeled as common area and the responsibility of the HOA. I'm just wondering, what about the subdivisions that won't have an HOA? I don't want to force.
There are very few new subdivisions being developed today, public or private, that do not have an HOA. That's very rare. But if they're going to do a cluster and they're going to have property not within the right-of-way, which is where we want them to be, they're going to need to have they're going to have some maintenance entity that's got to be dedicated to somebody. Developer, I assume, could retain it, but in most cases, they don't want to do that for tax purposes. And they just have to have an HOA to handle those cluster mailboxes.
So this would be if they took the avenue of having the small parking lot. So I'm guessing we're looking at probably the preference would be we're going to require them to have, if they put it in the right of way, they're now going to have to add the extra surface to put in a pullover lane to accommodate the way the verbiage is. It sounds like at least 2 vehicles at a time, the delivery truck and the citizen getting their mail. And then it'll have to be ADA compliant, I guess, with ramps and all that.
Absolutely.
I'm just, you know what's funny, kind of an attorney joke, I feel like I could argue either side of this, well, you know, I always say an attorney will argue whatever side's paying them, but, I don't know, it just seems like, obviously, more cost. I can understand the concerns with, I know Commissioner Cole had a subdivision in his district that they had to deal with not getting mail. I guess just the little part is now we're requiring more cost to go into these homes and more things just based on this, I'm going to say optional agency. There's nothing that requires folks to even use the Postal Service via, you know, private carriers now, but
And understand, what we're trying to do is to ensure the development community have done the coordination with the post office. The post office met with us back in 2015. We immediately, when we got the policy, sent it out the entire development community that this was a requirement, and we weren't getting cooperation. People weren't coordinating with them and coming back to us. We know where the phone calls are going to come when the post office tells you, the people call you and say the post office won't deliver my mail to my house. And so they're not going to do that. There's not going to be individual mail service at any new subdivisions. They've told us that. Now, the federal government can change their regs. We're not trying to regulate that. We're just trying to make certain that you, the board, has, information that says everybody knew about it up front. And we're addressing subdivisions already constructed but not platted, and then those brand-new subdivisions. So our policy is asking for coordination, and this is guidance that we're in the policy giving them, that this is how you can accomplish this with the post office, but we're not saying you must do this.
Rod, excuse me just a second, Commissioner Parker. Roger, is this language like boilerplate through the post office or, state building or anything like that?
In the backup, under the engineering item number, I do believe that's number 7, third page in, maybe 4th, is the actual post office policy that we were given.
I don't have it.
Okay. So we pretty much.
Item number 8,
We didn't make this up. This is.
Absolutely not.
All right, so
They
Sam, what it is, it's an unfunded federal mandate, and what we're trying to do is just cover our new citizens coming in from this being ignored from the developers. I hate it for our development community. It's more cost to them, but if they know it up front, they could spread it over the cost of the whole development rather than being hit with it after the fact and then having to try to incorporate that cost after the fact. So that's, unfortunately, it's something we're having to do, just like I say, just like we do unfunded state mandates. We're having to incorporate an unfunded federal mandate here.
Mr. Chairman, I think, and that's probably the best analogy I can come up with, what you just stated is, I know common sense here. Obviously, we're going to do this. I'm just sort of have that little thing in the back of my head that cautions me about, just like Roger said, they can change their policy next week or next year, and then here we are back in the same boat. And it's like, so now we're playing force our developers who sometimes get cast this light of the big bad evil wolf, but I mean they're providing a service to citizens that want to move here. They're providing home and shelter, and we're casting more cost and more obligations, which they have to compete with neighboring counties as well as existing homes, and in turn is more just to say you have to have mail service, and I guess that's the only hiccup I have versus. And the reason I say is probably the way you put it's the best versus why are we not directing, yeah, we may get the phone calls, but we're going to get the phone calls when the homestead exemption passes and we have to cut services because we cut funding. And then we're back to the same thing of, oh, well you voted for it, or kind of like we mentioned Holly Navarre Fire Department. There was a heck of a backlash that sometimes, unfortunately, the populace votes for things that they may have not have fully understood. And I've heard that even from this fire increase from Holly Navarre, but versus why are the folks not dealing with the Postal Service? And I don't know, it's just frustrating because now we're imposing more upon these folks that are trying to build homes and more cost just to play the game of the Postal Service.
I think the best way I see this is that you're in the position, you as the board are in the position of approving these subdivision designs and development. So that's why you need this policy, is because the unsuspecting folks that are moving here, and when they have no clue about the Postal Service regulation. Now we're aware of it. For you to approve it without taking that into consideration, then you've really put them in a difficult position. And we've had a couple of those that, after the fact, that are in a difficult position in this kind of. So I think that's. You're the one approving the subdivision design, and I think that's, with this known situation, we've got to have a policy to deal with that.
One other, Mr. Chairman, if I may, one other consideration that hasn't been discussed is that if the pull-off area or parking lot is outside of the right-of-way, there would be maintenance associated with that. And mowing grass around the mailbox or next to a sidewalk or restriping a parking lot, those are maintenance items that if there's not an HOA to take care of, it would certainly fall back on the county. So that's a financial obligation that the county would be taking on these new subdivisions. So I just wanted to mention that. It is a further consideration that, you know, we don't have the means currently in our road department to go out and mow grass down to lawn care level next to mailboxes or, you know, gang mailboxes or around parking lots. So that level of maintenance would be difficult for us to provide currently. So just one other consideration.
You're saying that's if it is on the right-of-way.
That's if it's outside the right-of-way. If it is on the right-of-way.
Outside the right-of-way, why would we
Well,
have any
and
obligation?
that's something that, you know, if it's in the right-of-way, we're gonna have to mow it. But it, and that's one reason that the language that's being proposed has the gang mailbox sitting on a concrete pad so that the weeds aren't growing up underneath it. That was I'll call that a consideration that we discussed from Public Works and Engineering talking over a year ago about these items. But if it's something that's off the right-of-way and much more elaborate, then there'd be that much more to maintain.
Okay. Commissioner Lynchard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the proposed policy, I don't see an alternate, but on both of these, couldn't we have a statement that as an alternative to either of these approaches to the clustered mailbox, the developer can provide suitable evidence from the post service that individual curbside approval has been approved for that subdivision?
Oh, absolutely. The policy talks about language. We're wanting verification he's coordinated. All right, we were just trying to give some guidance on how to approach the post office. The post office will tell him where within his new development those clusters may go. Our policy is saying we want to have the ability to comment from a public safety standpoint as it relates to intersections, entrance driveways, maintenance of traffic, and all those things and considerations. But the post office will be the ones dictating where and when and how.
So the developer still has the option of going to the post office and getting approval for individual mailboxes if the post office is so
If they
inclined.
determine that that's possible to continue. We've had
Right.
one development here in the county, they had individual post offices in phase one, but subsequent phases are gonna be clustered.
Right, so but that's still an option. We're not
Yes.
taking that option
No.
away?
We're
People
just
can-
asking
Yeah.
for
I-
verification of coordination.
I'm fine with that. I would, I support this as written.
Mr. Salter?
Mr. Chairman, reading the policy, effective April 5th, 2012, the last sentence says, "The builder must get advanced approval from the post office to determine the method of delivery." Not exactly how to be, but the method of delivery. The Postal Service is not responsible for seeking out the builder. The builder has to contact the Postal Service. So it's pretty plain that the builder has to contact the Postal Service to seek out the best method of delivery.
So basically, what we're doing today is this is a wake-up call. Make sure this T is crossed and I is dotted.
A little further than a wake-up call.
Well, I meant, you know, for everybody. We're not doing it now. We need to start doing it, according to Commissioner Salter just read. I mean, probably should have addressed this when this policy came out from the post office, but, you know, some things just don't
Well,
catch till you
and
get
just
complaints.
so you know, not everything that comes up needs a LDC change to
No,
incorporate.
no.
We did it as a matter of policy. We sent it out to the entire development community, and it's only this one subdivision that has prompted that he was desirous of not even doing anything.
Yeah, well,
No evidence of coordination, so that's what prompted us
that's
to bring
one
it to
out
you.
of, the preserve we haven't forced their hand yet, or they're getting away without it. So, you know, it's the only way we're gonna be able to go ahead and get ahead of this thing, is incorporate this now.
Yes, sir.
My thoughts on keeping it mowed, if you own a house and you're out mowing your grass and this thing happens to be in your side yard or even your front yard, more than likely you're gonna mow it. And as far as, I understand Commissioner Parker's concern with offsetting the cost, but this isn't just a Santa Rosa County thing. This is a national, federal thing. So a subdivision in Okaloosa County or even in Georgia or Alabama is gonna have to do the same thing. So it's gonna escalate the cost across the board, not just in Santa Rosa County.
I haven't, had time to do any real, checking, but I'm sure, is this pretty much comparative language to neighboring counties, or?
I couldn't say. This is language we developed a year ago, this policy language you see right here. This was our proactive response when we met with the postmaster, what he was asking local government to do. We developed that and sent this out, and so we're bringing it forward. This is what we've been doing on a volunteer basis, if you will, without having, codifying language in the LDC saying you must do this. So I can't say what other local agencies have done or are doing, but we certainly can bring that back to the board at some future.
I
prior to
guess it'll be,
adoption.
oh, you're talking about the LDC, but not
LDC.
prior to this action today. I just, again, really more of a comment, just, adding cost to, and I would say everybody on this board and probably everybody in this room uses the postal service less and less, year after year, especially with the advent of electronic, funding sources, so, I don't know. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna move this without objection. Hearing none, passes. Item 6, extension of contract for purchase of 4 restrictive easements adjacent to Whiting Field. This is pretty much the way we've been doing this for years. Any comments or questions on these contracts? Mr. Andrews?
One of them is closing today. We just couldn't get it. The original contract was done for last fiscal year, and they weren't extended to go this fiscal year. And so the Navy wanted to have an extension in the file, but and this is the Howell property, Sandy Wyatt, Franklin, Allen, those properties that are on essentially on the end of the runway at Whiting Field. We've been looking to purchase this property for a number of years, so it's something we need to do.
All right. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll move it without objection. Hearing none, it passes. Item 7 is our meeting list. It's all printed and on our website for people. Any comments, questions, or changes? Hearing none, I'll move it without objection. Now it passes. All the other departments and committees have no other items on the regular agenda, so I'll ask if there's any further comments from any of staff. Seeing none, anything from the commissioners? Anything in public forum? Hearing none, we are adjourned.